Shalom. This is Eliyahu Mitrov. I'm going to give a shiur, a class today in the first parak of Gitten, at the very beginning of the Mishnah. It says like this. Hamevi get from Medina Sayam, someone who brings a paper of divorce contract, from Medina Sayam, from outside of Eretz Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael. He has to say that before me it was written and before me it was signed. He has to be a witness to the signing and the writing of the get, of the divorce document. So the Gemara explains on that. My timer. What do we need this for? What do we need for this guy to show up and say, before me it was written, before me it was signed? My timer. Rabba Omar. Rabba says that the reason is the fi she'ein bakiin lishma, because the people in Chutz La'aretz, they're not experts in this law that the get has to be written the Shema. There's a pasuk in the Torah that says v'katav la. When you write a divorce document, it has to be written specifically to her, from this husband to this wife. Specifically, you have to have kavanah. You have to have in mind that when you write this document, it is for her and him. So since they're not experts in that law, or in the end of the day, they don't dorish the pasuk, v'katav la. So we make the witness come and say, before me it was written, before me it was signed. And it's a machlokas how exactly we know whether it was written lishma, that we ask him or it's included in the words. But when he says these words, we assume that it was written lishma. That is according to Rabbah. But according to Rava Omar, the fi she'ein edem mitzuyin. The reason why we require this one person to say before me it was signed is because there's no edem around. Why? Because it came from Chutz La'aretz, this get. Now, what's going to happen if the Baal shows up and says, I didn't write it? So the Edom are not going to be, because the Edom are not here. They're in Chutz La'aretz. They're in America somewhere. Who knows where they are? So that's the reason why we need him to say that. What's it going to help? He's just one Edom. The answer is we go kula because of Aguna. We don't want women to have a situation where they're stuck. So we believe there's one aid in this situation. There's a whole lumdus on that also. Now going back to the Rashi says here, maybe get Medina Sayam, the one who brings a get from Medina Sayam, call Chutz La'aretz Kaile Medina Sayam, all of Chutz La'aretz is called Medina Sayam, bar, except for Bavel, Kedamar Lekaman, because in Bavel the Talmidei Chachamim is not considered Chutz La'aretz the same level or close to the level of the rabbis in Eretz Yisrael. Now, Sarik Shamar, it says he needs to say it. Why does he need to say it? Who needs to say it? Hashaliach Ameviu, the one who brings the get, Lomar, Vakula. The time of Farish Gemara, explaining the Gemara, which is what I just explained, Machlokas, Rabba and Rava. This shliach, which shliach are we talking about? First of all, it says a maybe. Who brings a maybe get? I'm talking about the woman herself. It's talking about a shliach that brings a get. Now, whose shliach is it? There's two possibilities. Either the shliach is the Baal, the husband, or the shliach is the woman. Shliach, Rashi says it must be shliach halucha. Shliach zeh Baal asu. The husband did it. Shliach halucha. So basically, the case is where the Baal sends a shliach with the get to Eretz Yisrael to divorce his wife in Eretz Yisrael. The other possibility would be that the wife sends the shliach to Chutz La'aretz, and the Baal gives that shliach the get. There's two possibilities. That's exactly what the class is going to be on. What's the difference between the two? But Rashi says for sure we're talking about a shliach lehalucha, the shliach of the Baal. So on this, we have the famous Ran. Get to the right spot here. A second. So the Ran on Daf Dalet of the Rif here. Here's Daf Hey, but it really starts here on top. So it says there, let me get this clear for you. V'katav la. V'katav Rashi. Rashi says, Zal, Mishnah Tenu, in our Mishnah, Sheshliach zeh hashenuyim Mishnah babal asu shliach lalucha. One must be talking about a shliach halucha. Venerally, he says, it appears to me, Shekatav Cain. Why did Rashi have to say specifically as a shliach halucha? I mean, simply pashtas. It could be either shliach. It doesn't say. It just says the one who brings a get. So it could be either the shliach of the Baal or it could be the shliach of the man. Why is it specifically the shliach of the man? Because, continues here in the next Amud, Paul. Hold on a second. The havi shliach Kabbalah, because if it was a shliach Kabbalah, kevin sha'isha niskarsha b'kabbalato enu srik leomar b'fani niktam. He wants to say that since the Mishnah says that you have to say b'fani niktam, so therefore it must be it's a shliach halucha. Why? Because if it's a shliach Kabbalah, if it's talking about the one of the wife, the shliach of the wife, so then we wouldn't need to say b'fani niktam. Why? The hainu nami v'pirkan. V'peraka mevi Tanya, and it says over there on Daf Kuf Dawid, Ala Demas Nisin, the Tanan Ha'isha Atzma Mevi Gita, a woman who brings a get on her own. It says there in the Mishnah. Let's take a look over there in the Mishnah. I think it's over here. Let's see what's on my Kuf Dawid. Here's Kuf Gimel. The Mishnah says like this. In the Mishnah, it says, Aisha Mevi as a Gita Bavachi ate Surika Lamo Funny Nikto. It says in the Mishnah that the woman has to bring a woman can bring the get herself from Chutz La'aretz, but she also has to say before me is written, before me was signed. So the Gemara asked on that. The Gemara on the next daf asked on that. Straight. Here we go. Hold on a second. It says, Haisha Maki Mate Begit Lide Agirisha. What are you talking about? Here it's quoting the Mishnah here. Haisha Atzma Mevi, Haisha Maki Mate Gita Liada Igrasha Le. She's already divorced. What do you mean she has to say B'fani Niktav? It doesn't make any sense. She's already divorced. So therefore we have to make it a kim to the Mishnah. Amarav Huna Bo Malo Tiskarshi Bo Ele Bifnei based in Ploni. Now this is a special case. When it says that in the Mishnah that the woman who comes from Chutz La'aretz has to say b'fani niktav, that's specifically where he makes a condition that she's not divorced except for the specific based in Eretz Yisrael, which means the divorce is being held up. But in a normal case, if a woman would bring a get and she already has the get, so she's already divorced, of course she doesn't need to say b'fani niktav. What does the Ran bring a raya for from that? He says, hold on a second. He says, since we see here the same thing by a woman, Ali the Masnis Natan by Isha Batsmava, maybe Begit Bovachi table Sarika Baloma funny Nectar by Isha Maki Mati Begit leader. What are you talking about? She's already, once the thing gets into her hand, she's already divorced. Igrasha le. The Alma the caution is Gasha Kavar, because we never rule here. Anybody who's already divorced, you don't need a kiyum of the get. If somebody shows up, they're already divorced. It's already history. So you don't need a kiyum of the get. But time with the Milsa, and the reason is because they came into Medina, lo sricha. The reason is because we are only worried. Why do we need b'fani niktav according to this? Is because we're worried that the Baal is going to show up ma'arer and he's going to make problems. And ein lechush le'iru. And we're only worried that the Baal is going to show up and make problems when he sent it to a shliach halucha. Why? The fisha b'shasha haget yotze matakas yada eno gomo magarish. Because even though he did give the get to the shliach, but still he's not a divorced man yet. Still, lefikak. Therefore, chashinen shema yimlach. We're concerned that maybe he is going to come back. And he is going to change his mind in the middle. He's going to run after the guy and say, "Oh, what did I do?" He's going to try to send shluchim to that shliach to stop him. And they were worried about that. And therefore, he's going to show up and say, "No, I didn't want this to happen." But in the case where you gave the get into her hand, liyad shliach, the Kabbalah, or her shliach, hari b'shas shahaget yatzi matakas yado gomer v'magarish. It's finished. It's a done deal. So So since it's a done deal, if it's a shliach of hers, or she receives it in her hand, and then she shows up from Chutz La'aretz, or he shows up from Chutz La'aretz with that get that's already been received, in such a case, the divorce is already over. In such a case, we don't need a kiyum again. We're not worried the Baal is going to come to Ma'arer. But Kevin she'en lechush, we're not worried. Shema yavo Ma'arer. We're not concerned that maybe the Baal is going to show up and make problems. Harya ish mutaris lenisa. She's perfectly permitted to get married. There's no problem here. Okay, the get was the Chutz La'aretz. And we have a maklokas Rabba and Rava of what the suffix is. But still, the suffix is only built on the fact that the Baal is going to come to Ma'arer. The Baal is going to, according to the Shita, Tosos we'll see in a second, if the Baal is going to come to Ma'arer, if the Baal is going to come to Ma'arer. But here in the case, he's not going to come to Ma'arer because the get's already finished. And even though we didn't establish the truth of the validity of this get, the kol heket delek lemichash leiro. In any case, we do not worry about a Baal coming to our heir. The Baal ain't the Baal ain't a isha sarik lekiyum shel get. She doesn't need a kiyum with a get. We assume the get is fine. Where we assume there's anything wrong. Mihu, however, im Baal ma'arer. But if it would happen, okay, it's true. We're not concerned that anything is wrong. But what happens if the Baal would show up? So then we would say, Mihu, im Baal ma'arer mekayim b'chatimav. So then we wouldn't establish it with the chatimav. The havilek go'oto b'shinui parking, like it just says exactly at the end of the Mishnah. Hamevi get be'eretz Yisrael, enu srik shiyama b'fani niktav. If you brought it from Eretz Yisrael, you don't need to b'fani niktav either because they know the din of Lishma, they know the law that has to be written in her name, or because there are Edom Etzion. In these cases, we don't worry about that. But what would happen if the Baal would come show up in this case in Eretz Yisrael? We would say we became a chatimav, became nearly. So the same thing would also be true by the case of a shliach. I just want to show you here at the end of the Mishnah where it says that here. At the end of this Mishnah, it says, maybe get Eretz Yisrael, someone who brings a get Eretz Yisrael. He doesn't need to say before me was written, before me was signed. So he established it with these signatures. So it's the exact same case. So basically, what is the Ran telling us? The Ran is now telling us that why did Rashi specifically write that it's a shliach halucha? Because if it was a shliach kabbalah, there would be no way that he has to say funny niktam. He doesn't need to say that. Why does he need to say it? Because the get's already over, and if the get's already over, so then we are not worried the Baal's going to come to Ma'arer. When are we worried the Baal's going to come to Ma'arer? In a case where there's some kind of gap where he sends the get with the shliach halucha, but still the get, the chalos din of the get, the actual chalos din, I translate chalos din, the establishment of the get, or when the get actually happens, the legal, when the legal thing occurs, at what time period it occurs, that only occurs in Eretz Yisrael. Then we'll say maybe he's going to come to Ma'arer because he has a time space. Maybe he's going to run after the guy. But if he already gave it to the woman, or if he gave it to the Shliach Kabbalah, so there's no need to say funny nikta, because we're not worried about the Baal is going to come and Ma'arer. Why not? Because the get's already over. It's finished. Too late. Sorry. It's sorry. It could happen. It's true that he could come to Ma'arer. But so what? So what is he going to come to Ma'arer? Then we'll establish with the Chatimah. But in the meantime, we do not need funny nikta. Fine. On this, we have a Pnei Yeshua. Let me show you this. Make it bigger. This is the Pnei Yeshua. One second, sorry. Yeah. Pnei Yeshua. Rashi, Rashi says in this in his words, Rashi says specifically it's a shliach halucha. The kavana told shliach kabbalah. Why? And his kavana is that the shliach kabbalah, if it was a shliach kabbalah, the shliach of the woman, ain't speak leomar l'fani niktav, kamosha katav haran. Just like we read in the Ran, if you would have given it to a shliach kabbalah, so there'd be no need to say b'fani niktav. When the Mishnah says you do have to say it, must be it's a shliach halucha. This is all the kimta. Why isn't it in the kimta? Because it doesn't say anything in the Mishnah. Whenever you limit or make a frame of reference or something, for example, it says a maybe get. A maybe get could be anybody, a brother, a sister, a son, I don't know, the father, the brother, the woman herself, a shliach, her shliach, his shliach. It means every single case. So now we're going to limit that case to a case where it's talking about a shliach kabbalah. That's called in the Gitten, the Mishnah. It's dochek to say such a thing because we always want to like to say that the Mishnah is speaking about all times and all places. A stam statement, the Ramchal says, is speaking in all times and all places and all aspects. Until we know otherwise, we make the Akimta to say it's specifically talking about shliach kabbalah because the shliach halucha is not. Excuse me, that we're talking about shliach halucha because it's not shaykh to shebay shliach kabbalah, and that's what the Ran wanted to say. And since, but it wouldn't be a shliach kabbalah, so the gerushin would be finished already. And if the get is already finished, we're not worried the Baal is going to come tomorrow. The Anan Sahadi, important words here, that we have Anan Sahadi, the rabbis testify, we can assume Shabalev Shalem Gama, the Girash, that since it's already over, the assumption is that he did it with a Lev Shalom and it's over and there's nothing to talk about. He's not going to come back and Ma'arer. He doesn't have any time. There's no gap in time. It's already finished. Now, here he comes. He says, wait a second. I don't understand what's going on here. Because that doesn't really stem. That doesn't fit with Shitas Rashi. That only fits with Shitas Tosfos. What does Shitas Tosfos say? Shitas Tosfos says on the next stop, the Kaman, the Anan, Lo Chashin Inu Lishma. We're only worried about Inu Lishma. The Rov Bakin, Velov Bakin, because we assume that really the thing that we're worried about here is that, the Anan Lo Chashin Inu Lishma, the Rov Bakin, we're not concerned with the actual puzzle of the get. At the end of the day, he's bringing them kind of the Gemara. At the end of the day, when we say we're not concerned, when we say lishma, what are we really concerned? We're just really concerned with las. That's what's going to come out here. But he's saying we're not actually concerned with lishma. We don't have a problem with the essence of the get. Also, and also we're not worried that the get is mezuya if it's a total fake get or a false witness is on it. That the ikar worry is that the Baal is going to come to Ma'arer. Shalom Kadin. And he's gonna Ma'arer, and it's not Kadin, and he's gonna make laws, and he's gonna go out, these kids are mamzerim, he's gonna make all kinds of promises to Baal, he's gonna try to make promises for his wife. That's what we're worried about. But we're not actually worried about, and that's Shitas Tosfos. That is Shitas Tosfos. So everything makes sense. So if it's a Shliach Halucha, we're worried that maybe the Baal is gonna come to Ma'arer, and with the Shliach Kabbalah, we're not worried. Mashenkein, which is not true, Lishitas Rashi. Look, come on, the Chashash Gemorahi. Rashi has the Chashash. What is he worried about? Why does Rashi claim we need to be funny niktav? Because we're worried about the essence of the document itself. So this, if this is true, I'm going to show you this in a minute. But if he says if this is true that Rashi's shita is worried about the essence of the get. And we're not just worried about that the Baal is going to come to Ma'arer. Kushia, Ma'ishna Shliach Kabbalah Mishliach Halucha. Why should it be different which Shliach you bring? It doesn't make any difference which Shliach you bring. Hold on, I want to show you the Rashi. There, I believe that Rashi is on Daf Gimel. Hold on a second. My computer is making trouble. Here. It's Daf base here. Let's see, it's the bottom. Last Rashi. Here it is. At the end of the day, the Maskana of the Gemara, this is the Rashi that says the problem is we're actually worried about the essence of the get here. What's the problem here? Mikvah Gemiri, at the end of the day, yes, they are learned, they do know, and we're not worried about Shema. What are we really worried about? Las. Right. The get Mikvah Gemiri, they do know that the get V'ish V'voy Lishma. Rabbanan who did Srika. The reason why it's at the kind of the Rabbanan that we need it, and maybe there's going to be lies, so you have to say it. Now, what's the problem, though? The Michash Milsa. We have a Chashash. Mishum de'ike de eshkach hakasu v'omer. Maybe this guy found a get that was already written with his name and her name. He goes sheniktav l'shem echad m'banei iro. It happens to be there was a Reuven and a Sarah in the same ear. Sheshemo v'shemo v'shema shema. and we're worried about that his name was like his name, and her name was like her name, and the guy used it, the Nimlach, and the original owner of that get was Nimlach. He said, I'm going to do it, and he left it around somewhere, and it wound up in the street, and somebody picked it up and says, hey, I know this guy that was getting divorced, maybe we can use this get. And he doesn't, the Amoratzim don't know that you need the Din Lishma. But Nimlach or the Magarish. And maybe what's going to happen, he forgot, he didn't want a divorce, but this guy is going to use it as a divorce. And go back to the Panei Yeshua. And if that's true, give me a second here. There we go. Oh, no. Here's the kasha. Vakasha. What is the difference between a shliach Kabbalah and a shliach halucha? What's the problem here? If we say that the problem is like Tosfos, that the Baal is going to come to Ma'arer, if that's the problem, so we have a nafkamina, a practical difference between a shliach halucha and a shliach Kabbalah. Why? Because if it's a shliach halucha, the Baal still has time and he's going to come to Ma'arer, he's going to come to fight that get. He's going to change his mind. But if it's a shliach Kabbalah, that's not going to happen because it's a done deal already. It's a done deal already. He's not going to say, listen, he's divorced. What can he do? He can fight. Ain't no ganami, and then we can use Adam to fight him. But it's not going to happen. The chashash, the worry that the rabbis have about this thing, we are not worried about. But, so that makes sense. But wait a second. So we wanted to say that in Rashi. And therefore, Rashi said it was shliach halucha. That's what the Ran said. Comes along in Tosfos, it doesn't make any sense. That can't be according to the Ran. Why Rashi says you need a shliach halucha? That can't be the reason why. Because Rashi himself says it's not the problem the Baal is going to come to Ma'ar. The problem is with the essence of the get itself. The essence of the get is problematic. What do we mean by that? We're worried about the get was picked up off the street with his name and her name when using the get. So we're not worried that the Baal is going to come to Ma'ar. We're worried that this get is no good. So if we're worried that this get is no good, what's the difference between a shliach halucha and a shliach Kabbalah? It should make no difference whether the get is finished or whether the get's not finished until it gets here. Why? Because either way, the problem with the get is that the get itself is no good. That was really only according to Shita Rabbah and Okanami. But okay, we're speaking in Shita's Rabbah because Rashi was only speaking in Shita's Rabbah. That's where Rashi says it. But at least we know that in Shita's Rabbah that Rashi holds the reason. The problem is that with the essence of the get, and if the problem is with the essence of the get, it doesn't make any sense whether it's a shliach halucha or shliach Kabbalah. It makes zero difference. And Rashi himself said that the dafka has to be a shliach halucha. So we're stuck. We don't understand why did Rashi say that there was shliach halucha, and we don't understand the Pnei Yeshua doesn't understand the Ran, and he doesn't understand the Rashi. So therefore, the Pnei Yeshua is going to come and answer. What's he going to come and answer? Venire, line is daiti. The cave in the shliach Kabbalah, benigma, v'gerushin, b'midas hayam, atzma, su lo chashinan. He wants to say, no, there is a difference. Why? Because he says once by shliach Kabbalah, the get's finished. And once the get is finished, we are not worried anymore. Cave in the shliach Kabbalah, benigma, v'gerushin, b'midas hayam, Atzma, it happened, everything happened there. Tsu lo chashinin. We are not any worried anymore. We don't, let's put it this way. We might be worried, but we don't have to worry. Ki deheked lo chashinin de gittin shenatatim Medina Siyam. Just like in a case when a get comes from Medina Siyam, let's say somebody shows up with a get from Medina Siyam. We don't have a chashash on that get. We don't have a chashash on that get. The lo chashinin le gittin shenatatim Medina Siyam miyad abal. Just like if it came, the Baal. What's the case? It was handed from the Baal to the Isha Medina Siyam, and the woman shows up with her get here. We don't have a problem with that. But when he comes later to Israel, she's permitted to get married. We're not worried about a euro. That must be the case also true. That's Mefarish Gemara, that if the woman shows up with a get herself, we are not worried. You don't need any funny nikdav. So we're not worried. So what does the Pnei Yeshua answer? The Pnei Yeshua wants to answer. Actually, that's a good question. What does the Pnei Yeshua answer? Because what happened? All of a sudden, according to here, we see that he said, I'm going to put this in yellow here. It says here, lo chashinan. We don't have to worry. When do we don't have to worry? If a get came from Eretz, if it was already finished, if it was Shliach Kabbalah, we don't have to worry. We don't have to worry. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't make this big enough for you. Hold on a second. Let me make this big again. We're nearly learning state became in the Shliach Kabbalah and Nigmar Begurushim or Minidin Samatzmo Vesu Lo Chashina. We're not worried anymore. Wait a second, when we're not worried. Go back to the Rashi for a second. What do you mean we're not worried? Rashi says we're worried. What do you mean we're not worried? That was the whole kasha. The whole kasha was it said that we're worried about the get. You go back here, we're worried. We're worried about the get. Here you see it's clear it's before, but it's written in the Rashi here that we are worried. Make up your mind, you're worried, you're not worried. So therefore, we have to understand the Pnei Yeshua, what the Pnei Yeshua is saying. Pnei Yeshua is saying, no, this Rashi, we're making a kimta in the Rashi. This Rashi is speaking about a shliach halucha. So also the concept, this is beautiful. The concept of shliach halucha, the fact that the get did not happen yet, that's going to make us worry. But if it happened already, we're not worried. Wait a second. We have to understand what. What is that chilek? What is that difference? Let me go back to Pnei Yeshua. Why? So now we have a question. We understand the chilek of the Pnei Yeshua. The Pnei Yeshua says, even if you have a problem with the essence of the get, go back to this. Even if you have a problem with the essence of the get, there's a nafka mina whether the get occurred in Chutz La'aretz or occurred here. So why? The guys in the Kolel asked the kasha, why is that? Not every chilek is a chilek, Not every difference makes a difference. What difference should it make whether the get happened in Chutz La'aretz, the get happened here? That the Pnei Yeshua wants to say that Rashi is making an akimti. He's also talking about shliach halucha. But by shliach Kabbalah, there would be no problem. There'd be no chashash. Wait a second. What was the problem? The problem was, according to the Pnei Yeshua, according to Rashi, the problem is that maybe this get was found in the street with his name and her name. So if that's the problem, why should there make any difference whether the shliach halucha, shliach Kabbalah, whether the get happened over there or the get happened over here? Why should that make a difference? That's what he wants to answer. The Pnei Yeshua is now answering his kasha that he had on the Ran and the Rashi. The Ran was saying it must be a shliach halucha because the problem is maybe the Baal is going to come to Ma'arer. And there's no problem in a shliach Kabbalah, the Baal is going to come to Ar because the thing already happened. Comes along the Pnei Yeshua and he says, wait a second, that's very nice, that's Tosfos. But Shita Rashi says the problem is not that the Baal is going to come to Ma'arer. Shita's Rashi is that the guy himself, that the get itself is maybe was found in the street. That's Shita's Rashi. Come along Pnei Yeshua, also, even if it was found in the street, it was a shliach Kabbalah, it would be no problem because it already happened. Why? What happened? If you'll say that the problem is with the essence of the get, it's a shliach Kabbalah. If you'll say that the problem is we're not sure if it's lishma or not because it was found in the street, what's the difference if it was already happened that or it's happening here? So there's nothing written on this. Just Pnei Yeshua. So you have to say a svara. I'd like to say a svara. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. There's a difference. What's the difference? Because where does the get chal? If I'm the Mar da Asra and the people it comes to Eretz Yisrael and we're the Mar da Asra, it's going to happen under our clock. This get, when does it get occurring? When it gets to Eretz Yisrael, we say yes or we say no. Basically, we are doing the pu'ula, the action that creates the chalos din, that creates the law that the woman is divorced. That's happening under our domain. We're the Mar da Asra, and it's happening in our rishus, our domain, and in our time period, under our clock. So since that's true, the responsibility is on us. It's on us. We're the ones. When somebody comes, who matir this get, who kosher this get, where did it come from? It came from the Rabban in Eretz Yisrael. In that case, we have to worry more. We have to worry more that maybe there's a possibility this get was found in the street because they don't know what they're doing over there. We have to worry more. Mashain Kane, where it happened under the clock of the Rabban in Chutz La'aretz. If it already happened, I'd have to go back in history. I ain't okay, every little thing you have to worry about. That's true, but you don't have to worry about every little thing. I remember there's germs in the room. Maybe this, maybe all these things. I don't know. There could be thousands of sveikot. People get so scared they can't walk out of the house. I don't have to worry about every get that comes from Chutz La'aretz. I don't have to worry about all the history of all the people in Chutz La'aretz. If it happened in Chutz La'aretz, that was under their clock. That's under their domain. In their domain, so we can say that we don't have a chashash. But where do we have a chashash? When the responsibility is us. I'd like to say that's Peshat in the Pnei Yeshua. Okay. So here, forgot about this. What are we holding here? Abu Maram. The Maram is going to answer the kasha in a different way. Not like the Panei Yeshua. He's saying, why did Rashi, this is the Chasim Sofer. Chasim Sofer. Let me make it big. Change this to this. This is the Chasim Sofer. The Chasim Sofer brings a Rivash that says, Rivash says in Simon Mem Gimel Maisi over there, okay, the Shaliach should not have get but b'fani nikta, but achakach meis abal. Oh, the bow is mace. Lo mahani amirasa achakach. It won't help afterwards. Even though he has to say it, but if the bow is already mace, okay, it's a strange case because anyone wants the bow is mace. A woman is koni atzmo, which that's Rei Dach, the Mishnah in Kedushin says a woman is koni atzma, Gitten mace is a bow. If the bow dies or get, well, you have enough kamina. Somebody brought enough kamina in the shir, in the kolel. He said that if it's a kohen or not, if the husband died, she can marry a kohen afterwards. If not, if it was divorced a second before he died, so then she's a divorced woman. He can't marry a kohen. But anyway, if the bow already died, there's no din of b'fani nikta or b'fani nikta. Why? The kemit shemesa babo bater shlichus. Once the bow is dead, this guy's not a shliach. If the bow doesn't have shluchim, after death, there's no shliach. He's not believed. This is a very important point. This is actually an important point in the sugya. Only shluchim are believed. The shliach aminu chachamim. Who were believed here in yellow? The shliach. Who do we believe? We believe shluchim. Shluchim have the ability to say b'fani nikta. But if the Baal is dead and he's not a shliach, because there's some guy in the street walks up and says b'fani nikta, he's not believed. How does it apply to our case? So here he says like this in the yellow. He says, "Im came shliach kabbalah, but rega kabbalah get, but in shliach kabbalah when he got the get, liyado niskasha isha." So it's a done deal. Once the shliach kabbalah, even though it's the chutz la'aretz, he didn't bring the get back to the isha. But once we go according to the date, we go according to the time. It happened on their clock. When you handed this get to this shliach kabbalah, the shliach of the woman, the messenger of the woman, in that case, it's already done. But rega kabbalah again will lead them in his kishra isha. He's already divorced. The elo haisi imavu medina saw haisi mutaris. The nispa the call geverish. At that point, she's permitted to the shuk. She can get married. This is his answer. Since that it's already done, wait a second. How long is this guy a shliach for the rest of his life? No, he's a shliach to get the get. Once the get it goes into his hands, she's divorced. His job is over. It's like she was mace. It's like there's no shlichus here. But the fees of a garbage shliach kabbalah, then it comes out that a shliach kabbalah is actually. The fees that gar shliach kabbalah b'chutz la'aretz mishliach halucha b'eretz Yisrael. It comes to the shliach kabbalah in chutz la'aretz is better than shliach halucha b'eretz Yisrael. The shliach halucha b'eretz Yisrael. Lama the b'eretz Yisrael the afagav the lo sriich sarich I avad sahani. In Eretz Yisrael, even if you don't need, but still it would work. Masha'en kain about shliach kabbalah, but nahi with the lo sriich v'time with the kesiva of shliach kabbalah nahi. The lo srik matam shikatav haran. You don't need the word ran, but aniskilai. The harvihu kishaisha atzmo may via gita because the woman brings herself, or shniskarsha b'chutz la'aretz. So how is he better? Hold on a second. Iya ben izmahani. Avashliach kabbalah. That's talking about that's talking about the one from chutz la'aretz would be believed. Fine. Avashliach kabbalah. Ashliach kabbalah nahi the lo sarik time with the kesiva ran. We don't need the reason of the ran. The shliach kabbalah. Why did he say the shliach kabbalah? According to the ran, the ran was saying that since it's a done deal, so therefore we're not worried about. Since it's a done deal, we're not worried the ball is going to come to ma'arer. He's saying b'klal, we don't need that, and we also don't need the Pnei Yeshua, who's saying that since it's a done deal. So we don't take achrayas for such a thing. It's a very simple answer. Since it's a done deal, there's no more shlichus. And if there's no more shlichus, It's over. You can't say funny nectar has no value. The harv who can maybe it's like the woman herself brought the get, or and even if this guy would come and say funny nectar v'lo mahani, matam shekatafti matam harivash. Just like a Rivash wrote that after Shekavar Shlichus, if the guy dies, so also too the Shlichus is finished. Also, if the woman shows up, also once the get is a get, once the woman is divorced, we don't need B'fani Niktav, the Klau. Why? Because the get's finished and there's no more Shlichus. No more Shlichus, there's no Nemanis for B'fani Niktav. And therefore, and that's why Rashi, Nupashat, that's why Rashi wrote Dafka Shliach Halucha, because it was a Shliach Kabbalah, there's no need, and it doesn't work, it's not going to help this din, funny niktav. It's not going to help it because there's no Namanis, because the Chacham only gave Namanis in a case where the guy's a Shliach. Happens to be, I'm not going to show you inside, but the Rambam himself says that that's not true. The Rambam says, that you do believe these guys because we say midak daik that when the guy shows up, whoever shows up has to say it in front of the beis din, so he has a shtickle nemanis because he's scared of what he's going to say. That's according to Shittas Rambam, but according to Shittas Rambam, we can answer the way the Pnei Yeshua answered and the way that and the understanding of the Ran. Now, I just want to bring here Rav Gedaliah Finkel. This is a beautiful thing here. Let's get this. Second. Okay, he brings down the whole Ran here. Maybe you can start from here. Let's see. So we said originally in the Pnei Yeshua and the Ran, let me make this a little bit bigger. Second. We said here in the Pnei Yeshua and the Ran, that is a difference because if he sent the Shliach Halucha, he did not finish. The get's not finished, so therefore he's going to go and he's going to come back and he's going to fight. He's going to fight. But if not, he was finished. So he says like this: Yotzim Atakas Yado. He's talking about here. Shliach Halucha lefisha b'shas shaget Yotzim Atakas Yado. In a Shliach Halucha, since it get shaget Yotzim, it went out of his hand. Eno gamer megarish, but still went out of his hand. But even though it went out of his hand, it's not finished. Adayin lefika chashash v'shama yimlok ba'ar. This is the quote of the Ran. Or liyad shliach kabbalah, harli b'shasha aged yotzim atakas yado gomer magarish. So then it's finished. It's gomer and magarish. It's finished. So that's just in shliach halucha shliach kabbalah. But kevin she'en lechush, and therefore in that case, ein lechush shema yavo me'ar v'hari ha'ishim mutaris l'nitzah. And the woman's already mutar. We're not worried the guy's going to show up. It's a done deal. Now, pashtus, you would think lishono. Pashtus Lushanu, the Ein Gamer or Magarish. What does it mean in the case where it's Shliach Halucha that it's not finished and it's not divorced? Mashma she'ein lo Gemiras Das Legarish. You would think, well, he doesn't have total Gemiras Das. In other words, I sent it with this guy, but I got a couple hours. I got a day or two before he gets it. I can go stop the thing. So you would think that means that he doesn't have Gemiras Das. He didn't totally, absolutely decide to get divorced. He's still in limbo. About ein lomakach, you can't say such a thing. Why? The im kain eich yichol gerushin. Hello, gomer badasa gerushin. I say, wait a second. How can a guy get divorced? Divorce doesn't have gemiras das. He has to show up to court. He has to say, I want to get divorced. If you're Masup, like, I don't know if I want to get divorced or not. Maybe. If you're like that, the divorce is not going to work. So because you need gemiras, that's a serious thing. The same thing in a business deal. I was yimlak. I didn't mean it. So what do you mean? How can it be learning that? So it can't be the pashat when it says that it's not gamor umagarish, that he's not totally finished, that he doesn't have gemiras das. Ela befarish baran. Rather explain the Ran who the ein das mukleket. The das is not absolute. It's not a total decision. She'achakak. It wasn't the ein das muklat. Absolute. Which, what do you mean his das was not absolute? He didn't have an absolute total thing that afterwards I'm gonna come and fight. It's like buyer's remorse. If you know you can return the thing, so you bought it and then you say, well, yeah, I didn't have in mind that when I bought this, I'm never gonna return it. That I had in mind to buy it. So the Gemiras Das, he had Gemiras Das in order to buy it. but he didn't have Gemiras Das in order to return it. The same thing here. He had Gemiras Das to divorce the woman, but he didn't say that maybe I'll wake up in the morning, I'm not going to run after it. About Akshav Vada Yesh Lo Das Lachalos Sagrushin. You have to say for sure. Here, let me get to the top here. Where is this? Hold on a second. Oh, it's here. Hold on a second. What does it mean that it wasn't gamor? You didn't have total, that I won't yimlach. I didn't say I'm not going to run after that. I still had that in mind. Also, by Shliach Kabbalah. Masha'enke, which is not truth, by Shliach Kabbalah. Therefore, once Shliach Kabbalah, that's it. I know I'm done. I don't have a having. I'm going to wake up in the morning with the fact that I'm going to run after this guy because it's already a done deal. The get's already a get. And therefore, he wants to explain the Ran. The Ran's chiluk was whether it's finished or not finished. Comes along the Reb Gedaliah Finkel, a Rebbe Chaver of mine, and he says, Reb Gedaliah says, wait a second. What do you mean? Maybe that means he doesn't have Gemiras Das, and he has a Gemiras Das, so then the get's not going to be a good get. No, the answer is it doesn't have Gemiras Das for what? It doesn't have Gemiras Das that I'm not going to run after that thing, but surely has Gemiras Das. The woman's divorced. That's one possibility. But Od Iran Lieshav, there's another possibility how to answer that. What do we care what he's thinking? The Havi Devarim Shebalev. That's called Devarim Shebalev. So once you say, listen, once you did the physical things, you got the Adam together, you wrote the get, you handed it to the Shliach. It was Shliach Halucha. You handed it to Shliach Halucha. You'll say you're going to change your mind. We don't care if you're going to change your mind. Why? Because it's Devarim Shebalev. It's just something inside your heart. There's no legal reality to it. Shachen Chazal Chashash Lezeh, אבל אינו בליבו ובלב כה אדם, וגם אם לא גמר בדסה, even if he didn't have Gemiras Das, it doesn't matter. Why? Because the Devarim Shebalev, the Kaimalav V'Kihai Time with Devarim Shebalev, Eno Devarim, and Devarim Shebalev, Eno Devarim. So that's where we can say Peshat and thing. Basically, the Kasher of Gedaliah was 1 second, according to the Ran, if there's no Gemiras Das, how is she divorced? Answer number one is there was Gemiras Das to get divorced. There was Gemiras Das to get divorced. Answer number two is that even if there's not Gemiras Das, so still we'll say it's divorce because it's just Devarim Shebalev. Okay, that's the end of the first year in Gitten.